Hey, my GoPro still works. Hey, I'm back on YouTube, everybody. How about that? It's been a little while. You guys have seen me do Rocky Mountain Race Week 2.0, driving the Dale truck. Had an awesome time with Cletus and the guys. And you saw me in some of Cletus's other videos, like tuning Ruby, like we did this past weekend. Kind of had a little wheelie that we weren't really planning on, but hey, it made for an awesome video. Didn't hurt too much. Should be back at the track soon to see if Ruby can get around James in their grudge race. But yeah, we've been away for a while. Had a lot going on. Been working on the building here at the shop, and that's just kind of been a little bit overwhelming, and had some stuff go on. You know, just a lot of stuff behind the scenes that's kind of kept me away from YouTube. One big thing that's kind of a big positive for myself in the shop is we have a new website, winwithksr.com. And we'll be having kind of like some build pictures that are going to be on there, as well as we've got like our shirts, some of the events we're going to be at with some of our cars. We've got shirts for sale on there. We got hats. We're going to have stickers. We plan to do more, you know, kind of merchandise stuff that you guys may want to pick up. We appreciate everybody that's been subscribing. Some of you guys have found the website already and bought some t-shirts, and it's been awesome. We thank you guys for doing all that. So that's going to be helping us do, you know, a lot more of this YouTube video stuff. And we've been playing catch up on a lot of projects. Originally, the plan was to get the El Camino done for Rocky Mountain Race Week, and just trying to get all the parts organized to get it assembled and everything we're going to need. But we're going to talk about that one a little later. So what we'll do is we'll go over kind of each car that's still here in the shop that's been of the longer term build projects. We normally try to turn over some work pretty quick, whether it's dyno tuning or, you know, quick in and out jobs. We'll have some of that going on, but we also have these bigger projects that we're doing. The 63 Dart that you guys have seen in some of the videos. This one, we have a goal for completion later this year for an event in November. The hot side is all fabricated. The intercooler is all done. All of the suspension mounts have been reinforced and set up. And like the hot side's completely done. Obviously the turbo's mounted. And the intake is mocked up on one of our mock-up blocks. And the short block is in my engine room, just about ready to go. This is going to be a 5.3 aluminum block engine, and this car takes a lot of its development from Soccer Mom, which you guys may have seen in some of our other videos where I was driving that car. That car is a project that I partially own along with my buddies Will and Kimber. And one of the things that we've done on this car, as well as Soccer Mom, is it's got an air-to-air intercooler on it. Before Will, Kimber, and myself built Soccer Mom, Will had a awesome 3rd gen Camaro with a big block Chevrolet, had a Steve Morris racing engine in it, and a very large Pro Charger on it. And that thing would just eat ice, just like that was its job. So when we would go down to a race, like say the US Street Nationals at Bradenton, which we won a couple of times, like we would go to Publix and buy 150 pounds of ice to be able to make 5 runs that day during the event. So literally using 30 to 40 pounds of ice per run. That got kind of old. Lugging ice around, switching water. Well, with an air-to-air intercooler, we pull into the pits, we turn the fans on, everything cools down, and we sit around and just look at the data. And it's been awesome. Sure, there's a little bit of power left on the table. We may eventually switch that car and this car to methanol. But at least for now, we're having fun with where it's at. Some of the fabrication work you can see we've been doing on this one. All of this roll cage was done here in-house. And it's a 25.3 spec on the roll cage. Lots and lots of bars everywhere, around the driver, through the floor. And this chassis spec certifies to 650 in the quarter mile if the car weighs 3,600 pounds. And I'm pretty sure that we can certify it as fast as 6.0 in the quarter mile if the car weighs less than 3,200 pounds, which if you can see all this carbon fiber in here, all carbon, it's definitely going to weigh less than 3,200 pounds. So this is also a leaf spring car, just like Soccer Mom. So you can see our leaf spring, adjustable leaf spring mounts there. Back here where the spring mounts at the back of the car is a slider, and that mounts right to the roll cage. See a lot of the tubing and different work we've done back here. The seat is mounted, all of the seat belts are worked out. Transmission is done, the drive shaft is here somewhere. It's got a carbon fiber drive shaft for it. So lots of different stuff. The rear end is actually right here, all completely assembled, ready to just be bolted back into the car. The shifter is all set up, and these bumpers just came in the other day, so. But we've got everything wired up, which I think, yeah. So everything's already wired on a nice Deutsch connector. So we've got a neutral safety switch that's wired into here. The the MAC valve for the shifter solenoid. All of that is already scienced out. This dually here, that is something that is extremely out of the ordinary. See, it's a dually, but it's got a big giant single tire on the back of it. This truck was on Pastime like 8 years ago. Shoot, I think it's even been longer than that. It's been a long time ago when that show was out. Maybe some of you guys remember it. If you don't, look it up on YouTube. Had Big Schwag as the host, and you know, you guys got the participants got to guess the times of the car and then win points and win stuff. So it was an awesome show. Wish they'd bring it back. But this, back when this truck was on Pastime, it had a blow-through carburetor on it. A little bit different engine combination than it's got now. We went through the engine a few years ago, fixed some issues that we didn't like. Here this time, we converted it to a gear drive blower. So originally this thing had the same blower unit, but it was mounted over here to the side with a big long belt on it. And the thing would just, you know, we were spinning the blower hard enough that it would really eat belts. Some of that was because we had some issues with how the power steering pump was mounted, and there was a little bit of flex there. Well, now you can see everything is tied all together, and this thing is like, you can't flex it now. I could stand on that thing and it won't flex. So converted it to dual radiators, because this thing does get driven to car shows. See one of my air temp sensors here before the air goes inside to the intercooler. The intercooler is mounted all the way back here in the back, which I've got it out because I thought I had a water leak in it. I thought maybe we had taken a rock into the core and maybe damaged the core, but this thing has been sitting for 3 days now with these hoses filled up full of water, and there's still nothing in the intercooler. So that's great. But the intercooler mounts back here in the back of this thing, along with the water tank. It's got it's got an ice-cooled transmission cooler on it. So it blows the water through all that. The intercooler mounts back there. Hey, there's my little mini impact I've been looking for. Silly things you lose around the shop. So the Chevy 2 right here that we had planned to get to LS Fest, kind of had to change the plans there. The original goal was to get it to LS Fest, just however we could get it there. And the owner ran into some problems with actually getting a windshield gasket and some other trim stuff that the car needed. And we shifted directions to kind of create more of a finished product as soon as the car was done. So we did things like smooth the majority of the firewall and get it painted, and go ahead and mount things like the air conditioner unit that's mounted up in there. Kind of things that we weren't really going to have, that we weren't going to finish. We mounted there's some mounts for a passenger seat in here. The driver's side seat, you know, obviously that's all done. It's actually on a slider assembly. And over there, the brackets that you can see that aren't painted, that's where the windshield wiper motor fits. You can see kind of how we do some of the wiring. All of these wires right here go through a single cord that goes down to the trunk, and it has, that ties into like all of the rear lights are in that bundle. It comes back here and controls this relay board back here that runs the 2 Holley brushless pumps that are in here. It's got the fuel level that's in there, all of the tail lights, the control to turn on the air compressor that's hidden down there in that corner. Turns on the intercooler pump whenever we command it to turn on. The fire system is all mechanical activated. So there's a pull handle there. And the air compressor is going to run, it's going to fire a parachute release right there. So that's where that solenoid is mounted that fires the MAC valve that fires the parachute. And one thing I do, you can kind of see, let's see if we can do this with a flashlight. So this solenoid that's back here, that's going to be fired by the computer, whether it's done off of speed, but for sure it's going to have a video or a parameter built into the EFI that if the car sees a side G, you know, like it's getting sideways at a certain rate of, like once the car is say over 100 miles an hour and it gets sideways beyond where I want it to be, the ram shoots out, pulls the parachute, and without the driver even having to do anything inside the car. So it's a nice safety feature that I wire in. And you can kind of see where the brake pedal or the throttle pedal is mounted, as well as the brake pedal mounts down there to those 4 holes. It's got a twin master cylinder setup. So it will have, you know, front and rear master cylinders. And, you know, we've got the intercooler water lines brought up. We still got to plumb them. We've done some things like weld some tubes off the valve cover for where we're going to hook up to a breather can. Got one over here on this side too. And this nifty little filler cap that he brought me. I'm not sure where he got that, but it's kind of trick. I drilled and machined this fitting to be able to weld it to this tube. But it's got nice little locks on it. It's got a screen in it so nothing big falls in there. See that little lock channel right there? So when it goes in, it's a nice positive lock. Ties it on there good and tight. This has got one of Holley's new low ram intakes on it. This is a 388 cubic inch engine. It will also be twin turbo. And you can see we're doing the dual fuel system setup on it. So we've got our big injectors as well as the street injectors, because this car is going to have a stock fuel tank that's mounted under the trunk, kind of similar to what we're doing with the El Camino, which you guys have probably already seen the Cletus video where we were talking about what we are doing with the El Camino. But this was not in the Cletus video. Look at that crazy intake and how it fits inside the car. So as you can see, it's kind of gonna stick out of the hood a little bit, because the hood that he's got for this thing is not that tall. And we are going to do what we got to do to make that fit. I plan on putting the turbos either facing straight, like the axis of the turbo would be here, or I may turn them a little bit so that the exhaust routing becomes easier, and so that I end up with some more room to mount the radiator. Part of doing these projects sometimes is you actually go backwards a little bit to go forwards. And I may take this factory core support out and either fabricate something to hold the fenders up and the front end, or at least cut the bottom half of it off so I can slide the radiator downwards a little bit. It's just a lot to figure out. Just same way we changed the lower control arms to a true coilover control arm from TRZ Motorsports and their new awesome billet spindle. So just little things that one of the issues you deal with, or that I deal with, building cars with these bigger projects, you spend a lot of time kind of, you know, sciencing out how you want to do something. Now, we do a lot of things similar car to car, like you know, I love using these leash electronics boxes just because of everything being built into these. Like, you can literally run the entire car off of this box, even your headlights. Like, if you look, it's got inputs here for hazard lights, brake lights, park, right blinker, left blinker, low beams, high beams, and then your trans brake control. And then on top of all that wiring, you've got inputs. These inputs here control all of these relays. So there's your light relays, your headlight, like your low beams and your high beams. And then all these relays over here can do fuel pumps, electric water pumps, radiator fans, all that stuff. So your entire electronic module, you get away from doing the factory stuff. It's all literally right in one box. And, you know, they're modern relays. Flasher units that are built into this will work even just a single LED bulb or no bulbs at all. Like, I can arm these, and with no load on them at all, it'll work the flashers with LED lights in the car. So when you've got, some of you guys may have already experienced this. It's something that I went through a while back, where I would do LED bulbs on a car and then the flashers wouldn't work because the factory flashers didn't see enough. The factory flasher needed a load like it was a regular incandescent bulb. Well, the LED bulbs have no load because they're, you know, just like LED bulbs are so much more efficient. Well, they weren't loading the flasher enough to actually make the flasher click on and off. Well, that fixes all that problem, and it just simplifies so much, and it just makes it to where all of the wiring is in one nice area. It's all tidy. Everything gets worked out. So we're actually going to be moving this seat over to the passenger side of the car and putting a seat with a halo, you know, a head containment, you know, side bolsters, just to try and keep whoever's driving this thing away from the roll cage, like say for Rocky Mountain Race Week. Because I'll fully admit that having this much cage around you on a street car, it's not the safest thing in the world for a street car. But with a halo seat, or a seat with we call them a halo on the top. You know, you see them if you look at any of the NASCAR races, those guys are fully contained in the car. So they're kind of like a full containment seat. But we're going to be putting probably a large fuel cell back here. And then I'll either do the water tank for the intercooler. Most likely it'll be on that side. Or maybe I'll do it in front of the fuel cell. One thing I do when I'm building a car like this, I will actually drop the car down onto scales and just move things around. So I'll fill the fuel cell, the street fuel cell, I'll fill it up with, you know, say water or something like that to simulate weight, and then move it around, put driver weight in the driver's seat, and do everything that I can do so that I've got the car as balanced as I can get it with as little variance in each corner of the suspension. And I think that just makes for a better overall, you know, vehicle package, if that makes sense. So that the cars come out, you know, we try to make them go straight first pass to where we can focus on how to apply the power versus, you know, dealing with a car that's taking off and going to the right or going to the left or trying to put you in the fence. And another aspect of that is doing stuff like these shock sensors that we picked up. So being able to monitor being able to monitor what the suspension is doing will allow us to make sure that we're actually planting the rear suspension into the ground, and having these on the front, you know, we'll be able to see exactly what all the suspension is doing. On the rear, it will allow us to see, on the rear, it will allow us to see if the car is making downforce as it goes down the track, or, you know, or if we're riding bumps, you know, because one thing we may need to do is soften the car up, like power-wise, or take a little timing out of it if there's a big bump in the track at a certain part of the particular track we're on that day. And like with a lot of these bigger projects, there's a lot that goes into figuring out all the parts you're even going to need. You know, we get brought a bunch of parts, well then we've got to, you know, plumb the entire fuel system. So I've got to decide what I'm going to use for fittings at every single connection point for the two fuel systems. We're going to have two fuel pressure regulators, obviously the, you know, with two separate fuel systems. They're going to be run, you know, completely separate from each other. And the idea is that the large injectors that are going to end up here, those are going to be fed by a mechanical fuel pump that's mounted up on the front of the engine, and we'll have a fuel cell on one corner in the center. Haven't figured that out yet. Most likely it'll be over here on this side, or over on the driver or on the passenger side. And then we've got to work out where our filters are going to go, where the regulator gets mounted, where the throttle cable, you know, got this awesome intake. Well, as you guys can see, there's nowhere for a throttle cable bracket. So we'll call, you know, depending on what we work out, we'll either make a bracket that fabricates to bolt in behind where the throttle body goes, or if Frankenstein's cool with it, maybe we drill and tap something, or we do some longer studs in here with some tubes that stick up to pull on the cable. There's just lots and lots and lots of little things that have to be figured out. Where we're going to mount the transmission cooler, how we're going to do the radiator, what are we going to do for a water pump. And it's all part of the puzzle that, you know, becomes a race car once it's all put together. Well, if you've made it this far into the video, I certainly appreciate you hanging on for this long. I would assume you're already a subscriber if you've hung on this long, but if you're not, please subscribe to the channel. We are going to be doing more videos, including kind of like a build series on this car. And I'll do some update videos on, you know, each of these cars as they near completion, and we put them on the dyno. And then when we take them to the track to shake them down, you know, that'll be all part of stuff we're going to try and document for you guys. And, you know, we appreciate you tagging along, and we'll see you next time.